All right, here's number 3. It says Rachel wants to frame 2 photographs. The first photograph has dimensions of B and H, and each dimension of the other photograph is twice the corresponding dimensions of the first. She needs enough wood for the frames to cover both perimeters, and the width of the wood is 1.5 inches. Find an expression for the length of the wood she needs to frame both photographs. So what you've got sketched in here, this small rectangle on the left, is labeled as B times H, the dimensions of the first photograph. When we come over here, it's also labeled B times H in the larger photograph, but it's not just B times H, it's 2 times the B and 2 times the H, because they've told us that over here now they're going to double the length and the width. So that's why, of course, now it's 2B and 2H. Now what you see here on the outside in both drawings, the small one on the left and the larger one on the right, is the piece of wood framework that goes around the shape. What the question said right here is that that piece of wood is 1.5 inches wide. So that's going to add 1.5 inches of width going all the way around the picture. So as you can see here, they're showing 1.5 here, showing that width being added, but we could also show it here, 1.5 inches of width being added, here 1.5 inches of width being added, and here 1.5 inches of width being added. Now when we come over to the larger picture, it's the exact same thing. It's 1.5 inches of width being added going all the way around the shape. They've added 1.5 going all the way around. Now you're saying, well, wait, why didn't they double that? Realize they've only doubled the photograph. The piece of wood is still the exact same piece of wood that they're using on both. So they haven't doubled the width of the piece of the wood. All they've doubled are the dimensions of the photograph. And that's what we're going to take into account here when we solve out this question. So as we look at the top of the next page here, they figure out the perimeter of the small photograph. They've got 2 times B plus 1.5. Well, remember, here you've got to have if this is the length of the B plus the 1.5 they've added for the frame width, and they've written that on here twice. Why twice? Well, you've got 2 lengths, so when we're finding the perimeter, all right, you've got 2 distances going from left to right, the top and the bottom of the frame, and then the 1.5 is there twice because you're adding 1.5 inches of length to both sides. And so they're taking that and multiplying it by 2 because we've got 2 of them. Same thing for the height here. The height and then the 1.5 again because you're adding the 1.5 inches of frame to the top and the bottom here. So now this is about solving. And solving this is about using the distributive property, taking the number that's in front of the parentheses and multiplying it through to the things that are inside of the parentheses. So taking the 2 through to the B, 2B, 2 through to the 1.5, which is 3, 2 through to the H, 2H, and 2 through to the 1.5, which is also 3. And then it's about combining like terms, putting the 3 and the 3 together, which gives me 6. Notice the 2B and the 2H, those don't combine, they stay separate because there's no like terms to match them with, so they just carry down into that answer. So the perimeter of the small photograph, 2B plus 2H plus 6. Okay, big photograph is almost the same thing, except instead of just B and H, remember we doubled those. It's 2 B's and 2 H's here, which is what you see that they've listed right here. 2 B's and 2 H's. So again, it's me distributing here. 2 through to the 2B, 2 through to the 1.5, 2 through to the 2H, 2 through to the 1.5. So we simplify that. 2 through to the 2B is going to give me 4 B's. 2 through to the 1.5 is going to give me 3. 2 through to the 2H is going to give me 4 H's. 2 through to the 1.5 is going to give me 3. And then it's a matter of me combining the 3 and the 3 to get 6. And I've got 4B plus 4H added to the 6. Now, of course, we're supposed to find how long a piece of wood I'm going to have to buy here to go ahead and find the perimeter here. So this is about me adding now together these 2 polynomials to find a solution. And I can do that. I can add together 2B, 2H, and 6, and 4B, 4H, and 6, no problem whatsoever there. So that's what I'm doing here now to finish. Well, if I have 2 B's and 4 B's, that's going to go together to make 6 B's. 2H and 4H is going to go together to make 6H, and 6 and 6 is going to go together to make 12. So the perimeter of the frames together here, how much wood does she need? 6B plus 6H plus 12, where we change B and H into the length and width, and that will represent how much wood she needs to frame both pictures. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the concluding examples, the check it out examples here. Number 1, we're supposed to add 3y to the 4th, y squared, and 6 to the second polynomial here, and the second polynomial is 5y to the 4th plus 2y squared there. All right, so as far as doing that goes, that shouldn't be a big deal. Start off and identify our like terms. We know that 3y to the 4th and 5y to the 4th are like terms because they both have y to the 4th in them. So we can add those together. 3y to the 4th plus 5 more y to the 4th is going to give me 8y to the 4th, which is the first thing you see in the answer there. Then we've got y squared, and we're going to add that to 2y squared. Reasoning is because they both have y squared in them. So if I have y squareds and then 2 more y squareds, I end up with 3y squareds, which is what you see right here. And then this 6 doesn't have a date to the prom because there's no other lonesome numbers, no other integers, plain old integers listed in that problem. So he gets dragged down to the answer, and we end up with 8y to the 4th plus 3y squared plus 6. And again, it does not matter what order you write that answer in. They happen to write this in standard form or descending order, but that is not necessary here. As long as you have those 3 components and they all have plus or positive in front of them, you will be okay. All right, let's look at number 2. 4mn squared plus 6m plus 2n being added to the second polynomial 2mn squared minus 2m minus 2n. So let's go ahead and identify our like terms here. We've got 4mn squared and 2mn squared. I know those are like terms because they both have mn squared in them. So we can go ahead and put those together. If I give you 4mn squareds and then I give you 2 more mn squareds, we add those together, and that's of course going to give me 6mn squared, which is what you see right here. Then we've got the m terms. Those are like terms because they both just have plain old m in them, and I'm going to do exactly what it says. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because if we look at the 2m in the second polynomial, it's actually got a minus sign in front of it. So when you're talking about combining here, what you really want to be thinking about here is like terms, or rather negatives, and putting those together like you're adding a negative here. So that's going to give me 6m and negative 2m. That's going to go together to make 4m's, which is what you see they've listed in the answer there. And then here, same thing with the n terms. This n has a minus in front of it. But what happens here is I've got 2n and then I'm taking away 2 n's. Well, if I have 2 n's and I take away 2 n's, I have no n's left. So those are just totally gone. So we end up with 6mn squared plus 4m. All right, number 3. Miguel wants to frame a poster. Poster is 14 inches by 18 inches. And then they're going to put a frame around it. And that piece of wood that's making up the frame is F wide. Find an expression for the perimeter of the frame. So we can find the perimeter of what's inside really easily, because if this is 18 and 14, and of course this is 18 and 14, we can find that perimeter really easily by adding. 18 and 14 goes together to make 32, and here's another 32, which goes together to make 64. That's part of our answer. And then if we look at the frame pieces here, look at what we've got here. What do we have in the frame pieces? Well, notice I have 4 F's. We'll look at the other piece of the answer there. What did they add to 64? They added to 64 the 4 F's. The 4 F's that we have that make up the widths of the frames. So we've got 64 plus 4F, which is the perimeter of the frame.